Okay, November 2006, we hold the informational meeting. An hour-long question and answer session follows. Okay? Do you think we have people engaged now? We went from 2 people showing up, even though they got all these announcements and the whole bit. Now we've got half to 2/3 of all the parents present at this meeting with an hour-and-a-half question and answer service. So again, I think we did a great job of raising the anxiety level enough that they get involved and engaged, providing them with the information and giving them something that they can do. The first update showed that 74 of the 128 families had returned their pledge cards with an average gift of over $700. The next update revealed that 91 of the 128 families, 71% returned their pledge cards, again with the average maintaining at about $700. And the letter from the principal reveals that because of the campaign, the tuition was not going to increase the next year. We were raising tuition at the clip of about 6% per year. Now, I'm going to set aside the money for a second. Even though the money is good, what is the greatest thing that was accomplished here? That's right. We engaged the parents. The parents now own this concept of the school and being their primary educators. So the money is impressive, and I'm very, very proud of that because we've also maintained this level of giving. And every year for the past, well, since 2006, we've generated over $50,000 every year. And the average giving has maintained at about $700. Now, I live in a slightly upper middle class Catholic school parent. So one could say, well, you've got the affluence to do it. But again, it's not about the money. The money is great and it's going to help fund it, but more importantly, the parents are now engaged in the Catholic educational enterprise. So here's the breakdown most recently, 2009, 2010. So again, a little over half the parents are giving, with a sizable number giving in that 500 to 99 range. We found that we had a 10-month payment plan, and so one of the options that we gave was that just add a month of tuition. And so that's how we got that kind of $700 gift. The other kind of genius thing that I threw in is a lot of people want to get that tax break right in December. So we allowed them, check this box, we'll take your tuition for December, do it for the parents in partnership, and we'll just tack on a payment in May, which will be the tuition. Now this is good for 2 reasons. 1, they get their deduction right at the end of the year. 2, we get the donation right away. Right? Because you got the money in December, so when you're setting the budget in February, it's cash in hand. They have to make that payment in May now because they checked the box and that's now tuition collection. The December payment was a donation. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, this is some pictures that I took this year, right before the case meeting. What gives me great pride is that I'm not the parent standing up at that podium there talking. This is another parent. So we had successful leadership succession. And a couple other things I want to point out. I'm going to point out where the principal is. Back in the corner. There's the parent. Okay? Parent at the podium, principal in the far back corner, kind of insignificant in this whole process. This was one of the informational meetings that, again, continues year after year. This one was actually done in the morning because they've been doing evening meetings and they realized, well, gosh, a lot of parents forget about the meetings and they're driving up, and we do have some people who have time in the morning, and so one morning they stood out there, informational meeting this morning, you know, stop in, free coffee, bagels. Oh, most important point, this was a genius move since I passed it on. I started the Parents in Partnership program, so I knew all about it, but my kids came home from school one day and said, we get an out of uniform pass if you go to this meeting, Dad, you have to go to this meeting. So I was there sitting there and all the other parents, John, what are you doing here? My kids need that uniform pass. I gotta be here, okay? Okay, so again, I mentioned that every year since then we've generated over $50,000. Now actually we're over $250,000 just in the last 4 or 5 years. Next assumption, education and engagement of parents will have unforeseen positive results. These are some of the things that happen. Out of those 10 people that were in that second session, one of them was somebody who was very talented in marketing. I mentioned another person was an alumnus of the school. So they saw these trends and they said, well, what can I do? So one of them went ahead and started a grants committee. And our grants committee started going after grants. We got a McDonald's grant, this grant, the other grant. Now we're generating about $20,000 a year in grants. Probably most notably, we had a McDonald's grant that put smart boards in all our classrooms. Now again, I can't guarantee success, but the point is, once parents are energized, they see the problem, they see the issue, and if they have talents and skills, they decide, I can step forward and I can do this. I can set up a grant committee. We had another parent who started the Alumni Association, and so with the Alumni Association, they started a campaign to do this brick garden, selling bricks for 150 bucks a pop to alumni. 8th graders, as they graduate, great gift for your 8th grader. Memorialize in perpetuity that your son graduated in 2011, 150 bucks a pop. So again, our Alumni Association quickly generated about $50,000, and that's going to continue through the years. So here's some pictures of that, the Alumni Association, the Alumni Garden, the Grants Committee. Here's another thing. I know we might have some high school people here, and grade school people are always saying, well, the high school people, they've got the advancement director, the development director, they've got the annual support programs, and everybody loves their high school, but nobody loves their grade school because they're moved off and doing all this sort of stuff like that. So I thought about this a second. There's nobody from the Archdiocese of Omaha in here, right? Okay. I grew up in Omaha, went to Holy Cross grade school. I was the youngest of 10 kids, James family. So I started thinking, what would engage me in Holy Cross grade school in Omaha? Because I'm in Webster Groves, I got my own kids. And I thought about it for a second. I said, you know, if Holy Cross started a family scholarship, and if I found out that the Herder family has a family scholarship, and the Convoy family has a scholarship, and the O'Briens have a family scholarship, well, I'll be damned if the James family doesn't have a scholarship. That would be enough for me to get on the phone and call my brothers and sisters, and then as a presents to one another for Christmas or birthdays or for mom and dad, we throw a couple $100 in there, set a minimum threshold of maybe $10,000 for a family scholarship, give people the choice of one or two things. Either they can have the 5% go off every year to fund that, or you can have a smaller percentage of that go off and then have the corpus continue to increase each year. So like maybe $200 in real dollars every year from now in perpetuity. So those things I think really appeal to people who no longer live in your parish, maybe went to the grade school and now they live in far-flung places. Because it's the whole pride factor. If that's where I'm from, and if those other families that I went to school with, especially, you know, back in the day when I was growing up where you had families with 6, 8, 10 kids, that's a significant hook. Now, thankfully, Holy Cross has not contacted me yet, and I'm trying to keep it that way. Okay, assumption number 10. Parent advocates need to be educating regarding the violation of parental rights under the banner of church and state. And here's where we're going to get into advocacy. And I think this is the real big kahuna in this whole bit. I was talking about money and talking about, you know, my parish, and the money is great. But really the large dollars and the social justice issue boils down to parent advocacy. And we have bought this lie of separation in church and state. We can't get parents, we can't tomorrow say to parents, okay, gosh, we've got a voucher bill or a tax credit coming on out. Get some placards, go out there and march in the streets. They're going to go, are you kidding me? I didn't go to Berkeley. Come on, I didn't smoke weed in the 60s. What's all this protest political activism stuff, right? But if they are engaged, if they see the financial data, if they're working the grant committee and they're doing this, they're going to be receptive to this idea that, you know what, I am the primary educator of my kids. Why am I taxed twice? Right? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go through this really quickly. There's a couple of arguments that we need to lay down, and if you're interested in kind of a very short article on this, the Archbishop also put me on the Missouri Catholic Conference, so I'm on the Missouri Catholic Conference there. I wrote a short little piece for the newsletter that's going out to everybody in the state of Missouri, and it's on the Missouri Catholic Conference's website. So if you go to Missouri Catholic Conference, I think it's mcc.com. Well, just do a Google search, Missouri Catholic Conference, and I've got an article there that's titled, "The Child is Not the Mere Agent of the State," which is a quote from a 1925 Pierce versus Society of Sisters Supreme Court decision. But it kind of lays out these three principles, and in kind of a methodical form, I think makes the argument for tax credits. So the first point of our argument is the role of the state in education is to ensure that a literate population that may participate in our Republican form of government as productive members of society. I think we need to get back to first principles and say, why is the government involved in education? That's why. We need a literate population that can participate in our Republican form of government. That goes back to Jefferson's ideals. We need a literate population to participate in this process. Interestingly enough, for the educators out there, we all hearken back to our public school system to the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which articulated how the 5 Great Lakes states would be divided up in terms of townships and how we funded public schools from the 16th section of every township. It's viewed as this great institution, and it is a great institution of our country to fund public schools. But interestingly enough, if we read into the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, the reason for education, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be enshrined. Now, sometime over time, we lost that idea of religion, morality, and all that stuff. Second point from first principles, parents are the principal and first educators of their children. This comes directly from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, but it also comes from the United States Supreme Court. Back in 1925, the Ku Klux Klan and the Freemasons wanted to try to outlaw Catholic education in the state of Oregon, and they were successful. They passed a law that required everybody to go to the public schools. Thankfully, the Knights of Columbus came forward and they funded this case for the sisters, the Society of Sisters, which landed to the Supreme Court. And in a rare 9-0 opinion, the justices had this to say: the fundamental theory of liberty upon which all governments in this union repose excludes any general power of the state to standardize its children by forcing them to accept instruction from public teachers only. The child is not the mere creature of the state. Those who nurture him and direct his destiny have the right, coupled with the high duty, to recognize and prepare him for additional obligations. That's not the Catechism. That's a 9-0 United States Supreme Court decision, Pierce versus Society of Sisters, 1925. Third point of our argument. Parents, not the government, ought to be in charge of their children's education by letting them choose the best schools for their children. In Catholic theology, we see this as the principle of subsidiarity. Those people who are closest to the situation ought to be doing what's best for their situation. Parents ought to be empowered to make the choice for their education. Also a quote from canon law. It is necessary that parents enjoy true freedom in selecting schools. The Christian faithful must therefore be concerned that civil society acknowledge this freedom for parents and also safeguard it with its resources in accord with distributive justice. So that in a nutshell is our 3-part argument for tax credits. And also St. Pius XI's encyclical, I think, addresses that whole issue of subsidiarity in terms of people at the lowest possible level should be making the decisions when possible. Okay, assumption number 11. We're getting down to the end here. Parent advocates need to be organized and supported by an information and lobbying infrastructure. This is where people start getting a little queasy. Lobbying, infrastructure, political action. We've got to do this. I've been running the numbers in my head and looking at Catholic school financing for a long time, and when you're talking about increases of 7.2% per year, every year for the last 20 years, there's only so much fundraising, reorganization, redistribution of resources we can do. And fundamentally at the bottom here is an issue of justice, a justice for parental rights. So here we've got a structure. This is a structure that was put up in the state of Nebraska, and a number of different Catholic conferences have adopted this. In fact, I would encourage you, if you do have a Catholic conference, a Maryland Catholic conference, to plug into that organization. There's no sense to recreate the wheel. Use the infrastructure that you already have here. So here at the very top, we've got a Catholic School Parent Political Action Committee. That could be a subset of your Catholic conference. If you don't have one, you can create that, but you already have that in place. I believe it was Maryland a little while ago did the big information campaign and increased the number of parents on the rolls. And a lot of times along with that rolls, they can designate what interest area do you have. Is it pro-life? Is it social justice? Is it Catholic schools? And so hopefully the Catholic Conference has that database and has it within there.